I have to ask you, you were friends with Michael Jackson, right?
Oh, yeah.
Y'all hung out.
We hung out. We hung out.
What kind of things did y'all do together?
First of all, I had so much fun. It's a blessing to be able to know him. I mean, Michael's like a king. He was like a modern day king.
If someone asked you who Michael Jackson's closest friend really was, most people would say Britney. Some would name Elizabeth Taylor. But almost no one knows the true answer is Chris Tucker, the man who sat beside Michael through the longest nights, listened to him cry from loneliness, shared the quiet joys the world never saw, flew across continents just because of a 3 a.m. phone call, and stood up in that 2005 courtroom when almost no one else dared to speak. And yet, the moment Michael was gone, the entire internet claimed Chris Tucker never even bothered to show up at the funeral. They posted photos with red arrows. They wrote headlines as if it were the ultimate proof of betrayal, when the truth is the complete opposite. So what really happened? Why was a friendship this loyal twisted into a story of abandonment by the whole world? Let me tell you the story no thumbnail ever dared to tell. Chapter 1. The Jet That Turned Around. Chris Tucker did not grow up expecting to be Michael Jackson's friend. He grew up in Atlanta doing impressions in living rooms and comedy clubs. And one of those impressions was Michael. He could do the voice. He could do the kick. He was too scared to ever do it in front of the man himself. Then rush hour hit. Doors that had been locked for years flew open. Tucker was suddenly the guy who could fill a theater by talking too fast. A mutual friend made the introduction that every kid from the South who ever moonwalked in a bedroom had dreamed about. Michael was in New York working on an album. Tucker was already living in that strange new altitude where you fly a Gulfstream because, as he later joked, the bigger the plane, the less it felt like it would fall out of the sky. He flew to New York. He waited 2 days. He called. Nobody answered. He left the message anyway. "Michael, I'm in New York, man. I want to meet you." Silence. He told himself he had other business. He boarded the G5 and pointed it west. The plane landed in Los Angeles. He was still in his seat when he checked his phone. The message was waiting. Tucker stood up. He walked to the cockpit. The captain looked at him like he had lost his mind. Tucker did not care. "Call the office," he said. "They've got my credit card. Take me back. I'll pay you whatever you want. I don't care how much it cost." The bill was ugly. He has said it more than once. That bill was so high, man. He still did not care. The jet turned around. The same aircraft that had just crossed the country now crossed it again in the opposite direction. The next morning he walked into a room and met the man he had been imitating since he was a kid. They became friends that day. Michael started calling him Christmas. At first, Tucker did not even know who he was talking to. "Hey, Christmas." Tucker would look around. Michael would say it again, softer, like it was obvious. "Your name sounds like Christmas. Christmas trees, presents, fireplaces. It's beautiful, Chris. You should keep it." When Michael really missed him, that was the name that came out of the phone. "How you doing, Christmas?" That is not a casual acquaintance. That is a man who spent real money and real hours to sit in a room with another man, then kept coming back. They shot the "You Rock My World" video together. Tucker was on stage at the 30th anniversary concerts at Madison Square Garden. He introduced Michael to the crowd and told the joke that only a real friend could tell. After Rush Hour 2 came out, Michael had called him. Soft voice. "Is this Chris Tucker? This is Michael Jackson. I seen your movie. You're kicking with the wrong leg. Stop making me look bad." Then Michael walked out, performed the new song. And when Tucker came back on stage and kicked with the wrong leg again, the king of pop laughed so hard he went down on the floor. They went to Neverland, the Golden Gates, the music starting the second you rolled through, like the ranch itself was waking up to greet you. You walked into the house, and Michael was already sitting there in the living room, calm as a king who did not have to prove anything, asking how you were. Staff took the bags. You did not have to worry about that. Then something would happen that no amount of fame could prepare you for. 2 giraffes would glide past the window. Tucker would freeze. Michael would look at him, deadpan, and say it was 3. They went to the movies. Michael would wait until the last possible second, then slip in wearing all black ninja style so the entire theater would not erupt. Tucker would be sitting there wondering where he was. He would turn around and Michael would already be in the next seat. "Hey Chris, how long you been here?" About 5 minutes. I'm sorry, did I scare you? Then the lights would go down and the most famous man on earth would become the loudest person in the dark, talking to the screen like a regular guy who just wanted to watch the picture. Security would appear with popcorn. Tucker would sit there thinking the same thought every time. This is the most famous human being alive, and he is hiding in a theater so he can feel normal for 2 hours. Once in Vegas, they went shopping at the Venetian. That was the moment Tucker said he finally understood what it meant to be with Michael Jackson in public. People swarmed him like he was walking on water. They shoved Tucker out of the way. They thought he was security. They were saying it out loud. Michael Jackson's security guard looks like Chris Tucker. Tucker had to fight his way back to the man he had turned a jet around for. Michael would call just to check. How you doing, Chris? What are you doing? Let's make history. We want to see more of you. Tucker has said the biggest moment was not the video, not the concerts, not even the giraffes. It was making Michael laugh and not even knowing he was doing it. Michael would just start laughing at the way he talked, that Atlanta country music in his mouth. Tucker was too scared to roast him back. He did not want to get thrown out of Neverland. He wanted to stay. That was the friendship. Not red carpet photos, not prepared statements, actual time. A comedian from Atlanta who once sat on a landed plane and told a captain to turn it around because Michael Jackson had finally said yes. A man who would later walk into a Santa Maria courtroom and tell a jury that something was not right about the family hanging around his friend. A man who, years after the world decided the story was over, still called him Christmas in his head. The people who make the thumbnails never tell you this part. They never tell you about the jet that turned around, or the 3 giraffes, or the ninja in the back row eating popcorn in the dark. They just tell you he wasn't there. They are wrong about that too, but that is the next chapter. Chapter 2, The Trial, When Loyalty Costs Something. Santa Maria, California, May 25, 2005, Santa Barbara County Superior Court. The room was not built for movie stars. Fluorescent lights sat on everything. Cameras were banned from the courtroom itself, but the hallway outside was a circus. Inside, Michael Jackson sat at the defense table in a dark suit and an embroidered gold vest. He looked thinner than the man who had once sat in a Neverland living room and told Chris Tucker there were 3 giraffes. Thomas Mesereau Jr. was about to rest the entire defense. He had saved one name for last. Chris Tucker. Managers and agents had already made their position clear. They did not want Tucker anywhere near this case. They did not want Macaulay Culkin near it either. Both men showed up anyway. Mesereau would later say they would always go down in his book as loyal, good friends. That morning, Tucker walked to the stand with a diamond stud in his ear catching the harsh light, raised his right hand, and told a Santa Maria jury the story nobody in Hollywood wanted attached to their name. It had started with pity. Around 2000, at Jamie Masada's Laugh Factory comedy camp, a sick boy named Gavin Arvizo was trying to become a comedian. Cancer had already put doctors in the position of talking about funerals. Tucker met him at a benefit. A few days later, the boy was at Tucker's house with his father, saying the fundraiser had not raised any money. Tucker did not have cash on him. He wired $1,500 or more to a foundation for the family. That was the beginning. Oakland Raiders game, Lakers game, locker room, amusement parks, malls, a week or 2 on the Las Vegas set of Rush Hour 2, hotels and meals on Tucker's tab, the family staying longer than anyone had planned. Tucker's brother's wedding, which he later told the court they kind of invited themselves to. His people were already whispering, "Watch out." Tucker kept saying he felt sorry for the kid. He described Gavin as smart, cunning at times. He described the younger brother, Star, in worse terms. "I almost had to check his pockets before he left the house." The mother, Janet Arvizo, was the one who finally scared him. She called crying and crying and crying, saying Tucker was the boy's brother. At Tucker's house, when he offered her the keys to a used Toyota truck he did not need, she did not say thank you the way a grateful person says thank you. She started frantically crying, not normal crying, eyes red, body shaking. "Michael is the father. You're the brother." She kept repeating it. Tucker testified that something in his spirit did not feel right. He used the word the transcript still carries, possessed. District Attorney Tom Snedden tried to clean it up on cross-examination. Wasn't she just grateful? Overwhelmed? Tucker did not blink. "I know the difference. I meet a lot of people." He gave her the keys anyway, right before Miami. Then he got nervous enough to tell his fiancée, Aja Pryor, not to hand anything else over. The kids kept calling for the truck. The keys got lost. Tucker decided he had gone too deep. February 4, 2003, Martin Bashir's Living with Michael Jackson had aired. Gavin called twice. Media was at the apartment. They could not get around. They wanted to get out of town and see Michael, who was in Miami at the Turnberry Isle Resort. Tucker already had a charter headed toward Florida. He changed it. The Washington Post later put the cost of that Miami flight at $39,000. He put the family on the plane and took them to the hotel himself. That is where he pulled Michael into a room. Janet was still going. Father, brother, interrupting. Tucker could not even finish a sentence. He got Michael alone for a few seconds because he was about to leave town. "You need to watch out. Be careful. Something ain't right." Michael listened. Then, the next day, he took the family back to Neverland. Tucker told the jury he had been scared. His own associates had been warning him about things he had not seen. He had kept helping because he felt sorry for a kid who had cancer. He finally decided to distance himself after Miami. 2 years later, he was sitting under that courtroom light, spelling it out, while Sneddon suggested his friendship with Jackson had tainted every word. Mesereau had wanted a strong ending. He got one. When Tucker stepped down, Mesereau stood and said the sentence that closed the defense case. "Your Honor, the defense rests. Michael never took the stand." People who write thumbnails about funerals never mention this room. They never mention the Toyota keys, the $1,500, the charter that was supposed to go to Orlando, the mother shaking in a living room, or a comedian from Atlanta telling the most famous man in the world that the family in his house was not right. They never mention that Culkin walked into the same courthouse against the same advice. They never mention Mesereau years later, still calling both men loyal. Loyalty, in 2005, was not a caption. It was a man putting his name on a transcript in a child molestation trial while half of Hollywood hid. It was a warning given in a Miami hotel room that Michael did not take. It was showing up anyway. That is not a man who later skipped a burial. That is a man who had already paid. Chapter 3. The Last Years. Who was actually there? After the acquittal, Michael Jackson's world shrank to the size of a few rented houses, a couple of bodyguards, and 3 children who needed to be protected from the same circus that had nearly destroyed their father. From late 2006 until June 2009, Bill Whitfield and Javon Beard were the constant, former cop and young rookie, single fathers themselves. They lived inside the perimeter. They saw who came. They saw who never came. Whitfield has said it out loud more than once. The visitors who actually showed up were rare. Chris Tucker was one of them. They went to the movies. Tucker visited the house. Outside of Tucker and Eddie Griffin's mother, Whitfield said, there was nobody around. That is the sentence the clickbait never plays. The man who smuggled Michael out of hotels and room service trolleys, who stood between him and the world when even parts of the family had to book appointments, pointed at Chris Tucker as one of the few who still walked through the door while Michael was breathing. Those years were not glamorous. Whitfield and Beard went unpaid for stretches of time. Their own families strained under the weight of the job. Michael moved from city to city, always one step ahead of the cameras, always trying to give Prince, Paris, and Blanket something that looked like childhood. The bodyguards watched the circle tighten. They heard him talk about the vultures that were coming. They stayed anyway. Then the vultures arrived. June 25, 2009. Michael Jackson was gone. The public memorial at Staples Center on July 7th became a global television event. Speeches, tears calibrated for the camera. Stars who had not been in the same room with him in years stood on that stage and spoke as if the friendship had never been interrupted. Elizabeth Taylor stayed away. She said her grief was not a public event. She would wait for the real goodbye. That goodbye came on September 3, 2009 at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, private, delayed more than an hour because the family motorcade was late. About 200 people. White chairs set out in the heat, a vivid orange moon from the nearby wildfires hanging over the cemetery. The Jackson brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, Randy, in matching black suits, red ties, black armbands, and one crystal-embedded glove each. They carried the golden casket. Michael's 3 children placed a jeweled crown on top of it. Gladys Knight sang His Eye is on the Sparrow. Clifton Davis sang Never Can Say Goodbye. Pastor Lucius Smith read from Ecclesiastes. Then they carried him into the great mausoleum, where Clark Gable and Jean Harlow already waited. Chris Tucker was there. Getty captured the arrival photo, Tucker walking through the gates under the evening light. AP captured the departure. Contemporary newspapers listed him in the same breath as Elizabeth Taylor, Macaulay Culkin, Lisa Marie Presley, Quincy Jones, Berry Gordy, Al Sharpton, Kenny Ortega, and Thomas Mesereau, the same lawyer who had stood with Michael in Santa Maria 4 years earlier. Whitfield later said the celebrity turnout at the funeral bothered him. Too many people acting like they had a relationship they never maintained. He did not put Tucker in that category. Tucker had been one of the rare ones who came while Michael was still alive. That distinction mattered to the men who had lived inside the walls. The public wants a simple story. Friend disappears. Friend refuses the funeral. Friend becomes another Hollywood name that collected the association when it was useful. The bodyguard who actually lived the last years does not tell that story. The photographs do not tell that story. The passenger list of the private service does not tell that story. What the photographs show is a man in dark clothes walking into Forest Lawn on a hot September night, more than 2 months after the world had already performed its grief on television. What the bodyguard's memory shows is a friend who still showed up for movies and house visits when almost no one else did. What the court record from 2005 already showed was a man willing to put his name on a transcript when it was dangerous. The people who write the thumbnails never quote Whitfield. They never show the Getty frame of Tucker arriving. They never mention that Elizabeth Taylor and Chris Tucker both chose the quiet service over the televised one. They prefer the cleaner narrative. The rush hour guy ghosted the king of pop. The quieter truth is harder to sell. After the trial, after the isolation, after the unpaid bodyguards and the shrinking circle, one of the few people still walking through the door was the same comedian from Atlanta who once told a pilot to turn a jet around. And when the golden casket finally moved into the great mausoleum, that same man was standing among the 200 who actually knew the difference between a friendship and a photo opportunity. That is the part the arrows and the shocked face thumbnails leave out. Sit with it. Chapter 4: After the Grave. Chris Tucker did not disappear after the golden casket went into the great mausoleum. The cameras moved on. The internet built its preferred story. He kept showing up for the man he still called Christmas in his head. January 26, 2012. Grauman's Chinese Theater. A concrete slab that had been poured in 1984 for a Las Vegas project that never happened was finally placed where it belonged. Katherine Jackson stood there. Prince, Paris, and Blanket pressed their father's sequined glove and black loafers into the wet cement, then added their own handprints beside his. Justin Bieber performed. Quincy Jones spoke. Smokey Robinson spoke, and Chris Tucker stepped to the microphone and told the crowd the same thing he has told every interviewer who asked. The best feeling in the world was making the king of pop laugh. He talked about spilling hot chocolate in Michael's study at Neverland and being terrified he would never be invited back. He talked about the You Rock My World video, how he kept messing up the takes because he could not stop staring at Michael, and how Michael finally snapped soft but firm. "Chris, look straight. This is costing me money. Believe it. Look straight." The next night he was at Staples Center for the opening of Cirque du Soleil's Immortal. Same dark suit, same quiet presence, the show that turned Michael's catalog into living theater. Tucker sat through it the way a friend sits through a memorial that is also a celebration. He kept the music close. On Instagram and in random moments caught by phones, he can still be found dancing to Rock With You or You Rock My World, the same songs that once made Michael collapse laughing on a Madison Square Garden stage when Tucker kicked with the wrong leg. In 2024, at a celebrity golf tournament in Atlanta on what would have been Michael's birthday, he and DC Young Fly spun through the choreography in front of a small crowd. No red carpet, no press release, just a man who still knew the steps. August 29, 2025, Gary, Indiana. What would have been Michael's 67th birthday? The city threw a 2-day block party on Jackson Street. Jackie and Marlon came home. Katherine was there. Chris Tucker flew in, stood in front of the childhood house at 2300 Jackson, and danced again to You Rock My World in front of the people who had known the Jacksons before the world did. He posted the photos himself, hanging out with the brothers on Michael's birthday. "Love you, man." The comments under those posts are full of the same observation. He never switched up. Then came the biopic. In 2026, the long-delayed Michael film finally reached theaters. Critics argued, fans argued. Chris Tucker bought a ticket, sat in the dark, and watched his friend come back to life on a screen for 2 hours. He went back a second time. Then he told anyone who would listen, "You gotta go see the Michael movie, man. I done saw it twice. I'm going back to see it again. It's the best movie I ever saw after Rush Hour. My boy MJ. Off the chain." He did not say it like a paid endorsement. He said it the way a man says it when the person on the screen used to call him Christmas at 3 in the morning. When the person on the screen once made a private jet turn around. When the person on the screen had sat next to him in a dark theater in all black, ninja style, and then become the loudest person in the room once the lights went down. Watching the film was the closest thing left to that room. A friend who saw him after one of those viewings later described the quiet that settled over him. Not the loud performative grief of the internet, but the private kind that arrives when the credits roll and the person you used to make laugh is only light and sound again. That is the part the betrayal narrative cannot absorb. It is easier to believe a famous friend collected the association and then walked away. It is harder to sit with the quieter ledger, the jet that turned around, the warning in a Miami hotel room, the testimony under fluorescent lights, the movies in the last years when almost no one else came, the private burial at Forest Lawn, the handprints in Hollywood concrete, the Cirque opening, the dancing in Atlanta and Gary, and a man in his 50s still buying tickets to watch his friend live for another 2 hours. The myth exists because the internet prefers simple arrows and shocked faces. The record shows something else. One of the few people who actually knew Michael Jackson in the years when the circle had grown small has kept showing up long after the camera stopped needing the story. He still calls him MJ, he still dances to the songs, he still tells strangers to go see the movie about his boy. That is not a man who skipped the funeral and moved on. That is a friendship that outlasted the grave. Michael Jackson spent the last part of his life surrounded by people who wanted something: money, access, a story, a selfie. The bodyguards who lived inside those walls called them vultures. Chris Tucker was never one of them. He turned a private jet around after it had already landed. He sat in a Santa Maria courtroom when the air was radioactive and told a jury that something wasn't right. He showed up at the Quiet House when almost no one else did. And on a hot September night in 2009, while the world was still replaying the Staples Center Memorial, he walked through the gates of Forest Lawn and stood with the family and the handful of people who had actually been there. So why does half the internet still insist he refused to go? Why do the red arrows and the shocked face thumbnails keep selling a betrayal that the photos, the news reports from that very week, and the bodyguard who lived it all refused to confirm? Maybe because a quiet loyalty doesn't trend. Maybe because the truth is less dramatic than the lie. Or maybe because it's easier to believe a famous friend walked away than to sit with the harder fact. One of the few people who actually knew Michael in the final years still showed up when the cameras were no longer the point. Chris Tucker went. That is not a rumor. That is not a fan theory. That is the actual night they put the king of pop in the ground. Now ask yourself, if the man who turned the jet around, who warned him in Miami, who testified when it cost him, and who kept showing up long after the grave is the one they call a traitor, what else have they gotten wrong about this story?